The Layman's Guide to Hex. Introduction. What is Hex? Hex is the first blockchain certificate of deposit (CD). Built on the Ethereum blockchain, Hex is an ERC20 token that virtually lends value from stackers to non-stackers, which causes the value of Hex to go up in USD. Hex is the first smart contract to pass a triple audit, ensuring that its economic and security models are both functional and sustainable. Staking. When you stake Hex, you implement a function of the smart contract, committing your Hex tokens for a certain period of time. Since Hex is truly a decentralized finance (DeFi) project, the only one of its kind, even though your Hex are locked up when they're staked, you maintain control of your private keys the entire time. Additionally, you get to choose for how long you want to stake your tokens. You set this time in days. The minimum stake length is 1 day, and the maximum stake is 5,555 days. The longer you stake, the more interest and rewards you reap, e.g. longer pays better. For example, let's say I stake 10,000 Hex for 10 days. At the end of the stake, I would get back my original 10k Hex, plus 49 additional Hex that I earned in interest, but during the lockup period, which I chose myself, I wouldn't be able to access the Hex I had deposited without paying a penalty to early end stake, but more on that later. This is the smart contract's certificate of deposit function, also known as the truth engine because it keeps stackers honest. If you commit your funds for longer than you're able to leave them and therefore earn a higher interest rate, you're penalized for violating the terms you agreed to. Essentially, if you don't hold up your end of the deal, neither does the Hex smart contract. But interest isn't the only way to earn by staking Hex. Payouts are also awarded to stackers based on the number of T-shares, trillion shares, they hold. Payouts occur when stackers, for whatever reason, early end stake their tokens, and whatever penalties they accrue are dispersed to shareholders. To calculate payouts, you divide your shares by the total number of shares. This is an important concept in Hex, because it means that accruing T-share bonuses is one method of getting the best payout. In fact, accruing more T-shares for better payouts might even be more economical than starting with more Hex. It's much easier to get a 40% bonus than it is to buy 40% more Hex. Share price. To ensure that longer and larger stakes earn the most interest and pay better over time, a pricing mechanism was built into the contract. Every time a stake is ended, the gains for that stake are calculated in the form of a share price. All future stackers will pay that share price to convert their Hex into shares. Note: Hex's base unit is the heart. Hearts are to Hex as Satoshis, sats, are to Bitcoin. There are 100 million hearts per Hex. The share price moves relative to return on investment for a stake. For instance, at launch, the share price was 1 share per heart. Let's say someone ended a stake with a 20% gain a few days later. That would translate into a share price of 1.2 hearts per share. When that person goes to stake again, his or her hearts would be divided by 1.2, up 20% from 1, to determine their number of shares. This is how the contract ensures the value of shares will continue to rise. Here is the exact formula. Pause video. This equation was designed so that stackers are only ever able to re-enter a stake with the same number of shares they just cashed in at best, and most often with fewer shares than they previously had, unless they increase their staked Hex or stake duration. Thus, the contract guarantees that longer, bigger stakes will pay better over time because no one can play games to get more shares in the system. This also creates a sense of urgency to stake, because the share price, relative to hearts, will only ever increase. Payout calculation and interest. Each day, the contract accumulates a payout pool. The payout pool is filled with the daily inflation of 0.00995% of the total coin supply. This equates to 3.69% annual inflation, which is compounded daily. When you fulfill your commitment and end your stake, the contract calculates your total payout from your shares divided by total shares times the payout for the day. The contract then mints the Hex and credits them to you. Additional inputs to the payout pool are discussed below. Unstaking gotchas. Early/emergency end stake, EES. If at any time during a staking commitment, a user wants to terminate their stake, they can. The contract allows users to end their stakes early, but the user pays a penalty to do so. The contract is programmed to calculate the payout for half the days committed and subtract that from the funds returned to the user. A 90-day minimum penalty will be applied. For example, let's say I stake for 364 days 1 year, but I have to emergency end stake after only 266 days. The contract calculates my payout for 1/2 of my stake, 182 days, and flags that as the penalty. It then returns my principal plus the payouts from days 183 to 266. If a user emergency end stakes before they serve one half of their committed days, or if their stake is fewer than 179 days, due to the 90-day penalty minimum, the penalty may cut into the principal. The contract calculates the payouts from one half the days or 90 days, whichever is larger, and subtracts that from the returned funds. For example, if I stake for 364 days, and then emergency end stake after only 140 days, several steps determine the number of tokens that will be returned to me. The contract calculates my payout for 140 days, then estimates a penalty. Because I haven't fulfilled one half of my commitment, the contract estimates the difference by applying a ratio of half committed days divided by days served times payout. In this example, that's 182 days divided by 140 days served. Thus, the penalty is 182 divided by 140 times payout. My returned hex equals principal plus payout minus penalty. The penalty can be defined as a scaled version of the payout, so my net hex returned will be principal plus 140 divided by 140 times payout minus 182 divided by 140 times payout. That means I will get back less than I put in. If you early/emergency end stake before serving one half of your committed days, or if you stake for less than 179 days, due to the 90-day minimum penalty, you can lose a portion of your principal. Late end stake. The system also penalizes users for leaving stakes unattended after they've matured. The contract allows for a 14-day grace period with no penalty, after which the hex returned is reduced by 0.143% per day, or 1% per week. For instance, if I stake for 364 days, I can end my stake and collect my hex with no penalty until day 379. After that, the amount of hex I receive will be reduced by 0.143% per day. The principal is also included in the penalty, so if I'm 700 days late, I will receive 0 hex. Stake example. This simplified example ignores the bigger pays better bonus to demonstrate how the contract flow works. For more detailed information, please see Kyle's Hex Staking Deep Dive link in description. Pause video here. Stake-related bonuses/modifiers. All of the bonuses and modifiers described here are advertised on hex.com and coded within the smart contract. Kyle validated the math and operator precedence using Solidity documentation to make sure the contract really does what it claims it will. I've omitted the bonuses and modifiers that are no longer relevant since the launch phase is now over. Modifies the payout pool. Early/late end stake. These modifiers aren't bonuses, they're penalties incurred by other stackers. As described in the Unstaking Gotchas section, certain actions incur penalties. Half of all the penalties that are deducted from stackers' returns are added to the payout pool for the next round. The penalized hex go into a combined penalty pool. Each day, the penalty pool is drained into the payout pool for the next day and reset. Thus, each day's payout pool increases by the penalties stackers incurred the day before. For example, let's say 10,000 total hex were lost to penalties on day 10. Day 11's payout pool would be increased by 5,000 hex. Then, on day 11, 15,000 hex are lost on penalties. Day 12's payout pool would have an additional 7,500 hex, and so on and so forth. Modifies your stake. The bonuses that modify your stake are how your hex multiplies to become shares. The bonus for longer pays better caps at 2x, meaning 3,641 days, or about 10 years. The bonus for bigger pays better caps at 10% for 150 million hex stakes. This means that in a 10-year stake, your shares are equal to triple your tokens. With a 75 million hex stake, you receive a 5% bonus on top. The total after bonuses is the number used to compute shares. Longer pays better. The expression stake it till you make it didn't come from nowhere. It exists because the longer you stake, the more you will make. The formula is days staked minus 1 divided by 1820. This comes out to 20% per stake year. Bigger pays better. Size of stake is also a significant factor for accumulating bonuses. The larger your stake, the more you make. The bonus formula is hex divided by 150 times 10 million. This caps out at 10% for stakes of 150 million hex. Note: the percentage is capped, the bonus HEX is not. Example stakes. Pause video here. The origin address, OA. Hex's origin address is the element of hex that naysayers criticize the most. Certain elements of the OA must remain shrouded in mystery, but here's what we can tell you. Hex's smart contract specifies an Ethereum address as the origin address. The contract pays the origin address Hex in a few ways. The OA receives 1/2 of all Hex penalties, the other 1/2 goes to the payout pool. The OA received a copy of all bonus payments from the launch phase. The OA has never sold a single Hex. Conclusion: Hex, like all other assets, is going to fluctuate in value. If you buy Hex today, the price may be down tomorrow, next week, even next month. The further and faster Hex's price increases, the further and faster it's likely to drop. But unlike other crypto assets, Hex has long-term price protection built in via its certificate of deposit staking function. This makes Hex an ideal investment for anyone who doesn't want to stare at their computer screen all day looking for patterns to try and trade. Instead, with Hex, you can set it and forget it.